can this team win a ring? And more importantly, can they do it with Jimmy? And I'll throw some things out. I'm not going to back off my stance where early in the season I said if Jimmy starts, you can't win a ring with him. And it's less to do about, I would say, Jimmy and how good this team is, and more to do about what the history of the NFL tells me. 13 Super Bowls have been won by non-Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So it's very, very hard to win a Super Bowl, period, if you're not a Hall of Fame quarterback. At no point has there ever been a quarterback who's not Hall of Fame caliber that has lost a Super Bowl and then come back and won a Super Bowl. Only one time has it happened where that caliber player has made it back to a Super Bowl, they lost it again. So when you just look at the history of the league and what it tells us, it's not unlikely. It just hasn't happened. He would be the first. Jimmy would have to be one of one. And then let's move it forward a little bit, because you hear people say, well, it does happen where mediocre quarterbacks win, which is true. But if you really look at it, since this league became very offensive driven, 2010 is around that time that all the rules completely changed, and it was like, okay, this is an offensive league now. Only one game manager quarterback has actually won. So if you look at the last 12 years, 9 of those 12 years, quarterbacks who were top 10 in the league have won a Super Bowl. The 3 years that it didn't happen were Joe Flacco, and if you go look at his numbers, he played elite in those playoffs. In 4 games, he had over 1,100 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. That's elite quarterback play. So he turned into an elite quarterback for a 4-game stretch. Nick Foles is another one who, again, not the best, but he turned elite. In 3 games, he threw for 600-something yards, 6 touchdowns, and 1 interception.
2 games,
and then
right?
3 games. It was 3 games. Yep. So he turned, excuse me, not 600 yards. It was 900-something yards.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
900-plus yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. So he turned elite for a 3-game stretch. The only quarterback who was a true game manager in the last 12 years that has won a Super Bowl, believe it or not, Peyton Manning.
Exactly.
That's the one guy. And so to me, when I look at this, David, I'll let you go in a second. You got a lot to say. But when I look at this, I don't think that Jimmy can do the Flacco and Foles blueprint. I do think he can do the blueprint that was laid out by one Peyton Manning. Now, Peyton Manning that year had a lot of turnovers, but what happened was he turned true game manager once the playoffs started. The Broncos, in every single game throughout that playoff run, won the turnover battle. That is key. And their defense held every team to 18 points or less. That is the blueprint for this 49ers if they want to win a Super Bowl. In my opinion, the likelihood of that happening is rare. I'm not saying impossible. Right. But if I'm a betting man, I would say the answer to this is no. That's me personally.
And I honestly, and this is great because people could, I've heard this about, this is funny. People accuse Jesse and Grant or like whatever, like, oh, they're like, oh, like on the same. I honestly had no clue that Jesse was going to bring this up. And he actually took the words right out of my mouth, is that I'm sitting here thinking like the model that you're really looking at, oddly enough, is the Peyton Manning Denver Broncos team. And that's not comparing Peyton Manning directly to Jimmy. It's the scenario of Peyton late in his career, arms a little bit limp noodle, right? Like this incredibly dominant defense. Okay. The examples that you gave with Foles and Flacco were dead on. Is that, and they played elite level ball at other stretches in their career, but they were actually a quarterback in those games that won because of them, not just in spite of them. Not just like, oh, I'm managing them. They were not managers in those situations.
No, not at all.
And when we remember watching back to Peyton and beating the Cam Newton-led Panthers in that game, and I think most people had picked the Panthers to win that game based on with the Panthers' offense was humming and just how inept the Broncos' offense was. But I believe Malik Jackson was I can't remember if he was the MVP or what happened in that. But yeah, that's the model. And is it, as a betting man? Yeah, it's pretty rare. I will say this. If the 49ers were to go and face a team like the Rams got to face last year in the Cincinnati, that Cincinnati Bengals type of team, and the Niners defense was healthy, like went into like what they did last week, yeah, and that was the Super Bowl matchup, the 49ers win. I think the 49ers win the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah,
okay, against the Cincinnati Bengals.
I agree.
And so that idea that you can't win with Jimmy, you're right. Like I've been probably guilty of saying, like, we know what the reason we say this is we know how Jimmy plays in the playoffs. We know, and so until that changes, it's really not fair for anybody to ask anybody else to be like, well, you don't know. Well, I was telling my students this day in class, you are who you show yourself to be. How you think of yourself is, there's one person behind your eyeballs, right? That's great. You can believe in yourself all you want. That's awesome. You want people to do that. But you are who you show yourself to be. Your reputation precedes you because of what pattern of behavior, pattern of play, or pattern of however you want to say it. And so that's all we have to go with. But yeah, I will say this. If this defense can keep this up, where they can play this level of ball against some of these top contenders, then yeah, I actually have confidence that the 49ers can actually win a Super Bowl with Jimmy. Now, do I need to apologize? I actually do believe that. I think that's the caveat is I did not know going into the season. I thought the defense was going to be really good.
I did too.
I don't think I realized and I've been so pleasantly surprised. Like I didn't think the defense was going to be this good. And like the secondary was this good without Jimmy Ward. And so if that maintains, yeah, you're going to be hard pressed to see anybody really want to face the 49ers. And if Jimmy plays mistake-free ball, what? Say what?
No, nobody's going to want to play this team. That's absolutely not going to be the case.